Johnny Sack told me about this guy in Newburgh.
Johnny Sack?
Yeah, Johnny Sack.
Most people completely misunderstand Johnny Sack and Jersey's role in the mob, and that misunderstanding cost a lot of lives. Welcome to Sopranos Breakdown. I'm Matthew, and joining me today is Matthew. Together, we'll break down the world of Tony, Carmela, and the rest of the crew, uncovering hidden details and diving into the deeper meanings of every episode. Let's get started. Johnny Sack was the only New York guy who ever really took New Jersey seriously, and that made all the difference.
Forget Coco. Forget Fat Dom, who goes over to Jersey and never comes back.
Phil, Fat Dom, Coco. All of them treated Jersey like it was some insignificant satellite operation. And they paid for it. Dead, exiled, humiliated. Even Carmine Sr., though his end came via a freak egg salad incident, faced unrest within his own ranks because of his dismissive attitude toward Tony and his crew.
Johnny Sack told me about this guy in Newburgh.
Johnny and Carmine Jr. were the exceptions. They treated Tony like a real boss and reaped the rewards, at least by mob standards. Johnny may have died in prison, but he went out surrounded by his family. It was a dignified death, and most importantly, it was his own doing. Carmine Jr., he bowed out of the game entirely, arguably the smartest move anyone made in that entire world. Johnny's interest in Jersey wasn't just sentiment, it was financial. His money was tied up in the Esplanade, so he had skin in the game. But beyond that, he genuinely respected Tony. And he deeply loved his wife, Ginny.
20 years I've been friends with John.
All over a stupid joke.
He almost had Ralph clipped over a fat joke, which says everything about his loyalty and his pride. It wasn't just about the weight. When Johnny discovered Ginny had been secretly eating, it wasn't the deception itself that broke him. It was the shame, how it made him feel in front of his peers. That fear of ridicule triggered a reaction far beyond what the situation called for. He lashed out at her, and at some poor guy who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That moment showed the depth of his emotional conflict. Still, Johnny was no hothead. He had class and control, until he didn't. And then there was the recurring argument. Again with the money? Always the money. Either name a price or move on. This life was about profit, and New Jersey made money. Period. Carmine Sr., he played the long game. He talked down to Tony when it suited him, sure. But when the stakes were real, he closed deals. He respected Jersey's ability to earn. He didn't ask Tony to take out Johnny Sack because he thought he was playing with amateurs. And yes, he once said, "I'd be proud to call him my own son." Was it a compliment to Tony or a jab at little Carmine? Maybe both, but it was sincere. He saw potential, even if he still considered New York the center of power. AJ, for what it's worth, may not be a boss or a criminal, but he won't follow the family path. He'll need therapy and probably spiritual guidance, but he might actually make it. Which, ironically, is a kind of success in that world. Even when Carmine Sr. called Jersey a glorified crew.
Carmine always said the Sopranos are nothing more than a glorified crew, and we do business with whatever's left.
It was strategy more than truth. He needed leverage during disputes, but in practice, he did business with Tony consistently and lucratively. New York offloaded its dirtiest jobs to Jersey when needed, like the hit on Rusty. Talk down to them all you want, but they were still the go-to crew when things got messy. Johnny Sack's relationship with Jersey always felt like a twisted version of Gandalf's affection for the hobbits, deep respect cloaked in mild condescension. He saw something in Tony's crew, small but resilient, and very profitable. Once Johnny became the actual boss, the tone changed. He started giving orders instead of discussing terms. "This is the last time we meet like this. It's undignified," he told Tony. That wasn't a request, it was a boundary. Now that he had real power, the respect started to fade. If he hadn't been arrested when he was, that shift likely would have continued. Carmine Sr. understood Jersey's role, even if he didn't like admitting it. They were valuable. They were useful. They made him money. That's all that really mattered in the end. New York might have seen Jersey as a minor player, but the money said otherwise. The respect came slow, but for those who gave it early, like Johnny Sack, it paid off.
Ralph is a great guy.
Do I know this guy better than you?
Why do some of the most unlikely women in mafia families end up with the most powerful men? Janice Sopranos is the perfect example. And here's exactly why. Why were so many guys into Janice? Seriously, why were so many guys into Janice? Richie, Ralphie, the church guy, that young one-time fling, Bobby. And who knows how many others before she came back to Jersey to pick the friggin' bones clean.
And we got history together. 10 years, you thought about Janice?
Richie spent 10 years locked up, and all he could think about was her. There are better-looking men in the can than Janice, yet she had roadies lined up under the boardwalk, ready to blow them all down. So what made her so irresistible? First off, she puts out. She wasn't raised by civilians, so wise guys knew she wasn't going to ask inconvenient questions about their whereabouts, or let the cops in just because they showed up looking menacing. Then there's the social status. She's not just the boss's sister, she's mafia royalty, even if she's the rebellious black sheep. Despite her quirks, she wasn't a square, and definitely not unwifeable. And let's be real, that matters. Sexually, Janice was kinkier than a bar girl. She had wit, experience, and enthusiasm, kinks and weirdness included. The guys might be open-minded, but Janice brought something else entirely. Tony was jealous when Johnny Boy took her to the amusement park as a cover for a meeting. That tells you everything. Sure, she pushed Ralphie down the stairs, murdered Richie, and stole a woman's prosthetic leg, but she had an extraordinary visual sense, and that probably drew the men in. Those big Babylons, big tits, little feet, were a hit in any man's league. And her pre-Raphaelite curls didn't hurt. Some might say she wasn't physically attractive, but attraction isn't just about looks. There's a big difference between big tits that are shapely and enticing, and just big. Janice's appeal was about more than just physical features. As for the men who pursued her, Bobby was the nice guy, a bit nerdy and out of his depth, happy to settle for a wife who could boost his standing in the family. Ralphie was a psychopath who enjoyed having control flipped on him in the bedroom. Richie needed control too, reflected in their violent and complicated relationship.
Aaron Arkaway, Jan's friend.
I was addicted to cocaine and strippers. And then he found Jesus.
The church guy was a narcoleptic oddball. The young one-time fling was probably a horny kid looking for a mother figure. Janice inserted herself into these men's lives, sometimes forcibly. She was overbearing, aggressive, and manipulative, but also a force of nature, impossible to control. And don't forget, she was the boss's sister. That made a huge difference.
She had beautiful hair and she was built. Desiree always buying me ice cream.
Mafia families are close-knit, the dating pool is limited, and the friends and lovers tend to come from the same small, insular circles. Janice was there, ready to step in. It wasn't about love, it was about convenience, power, status, and a whole lot of raw sexual energy. She was mafia royalty with a coin slot, a combination that's hard to resist if you're a middle-aged wise guy with limited options. Most people get Melfi and Tony's therapy all wrong. Here's why she should have dumped him way earlier. Dr. Melfi didn't dump Tony because he tore a page out of a magazine. That was just a convenient excuse.
I only suggested you reevaluate your work with
Tony Soprano? He's your patient?
Jesus Christ, Elliot.
The real turning point came earlier. At that dinner party, where her therapist friend outed Tony as her patient. Suddenly, her snobby friends were laughing at her, calling Tony lead belly and exposing the uncomfortable truth. She was treating a violent mob boss. That stung more than anything else.
It's time to send him on to a behaviorist.
Long before that, near the start of season 3, Melfi had acknowledged that therapy wasn't appropriate for Tony and recommended a behavioralist instead. But after she was sexually assaulted, she reversed that decision. She liked having Tony close. It gave her a strange sense of comfort and power, even though it was a massive ethical mess. When Elliot revealed Tony's identity to everyone at that dinner, it was the slap that forced Melfi to finally confront reality.
While not only being useless with sociopath.
Right after, she did some reading on sociopaths and therapy, which confirmed what her ex-husband and her colleagues had been saying all along. Therapy doesn't cure sociopaths. It just teaches them how to manipulate better. At last, she realized she'd been used. David Chase has said he doesn't believe therapy made Tony a better criminal and even suggested it might have helped him. But that feels off. Tony clearly used therapy to his advantage. For example, the idea to make Junior a puppet boss came from Melfi's sessions, demonstrating how Tony weaponized the process. Elliot's betrayal at the dinner table was spiteful, and while jealousy isn't openly discussed, it's hard not to see it there. He was upset Tony was Melfi's patient, not his. Melfi, on the other hand, initially took Tony on to help with his panic attacks, but it soon became just venting with no real change. Therapy is supposed to offer new perspectives to help someone cope or improve, but Tony never made that effort. Melfi's colleagues warned her that most sociopaths don't improve through therapy, and once she finally acknowledged how ingenuine Tony was, she dropped him. The money Tony paid made things easier for her, but it wasn't enough to keep her from seeing the truth. Melfi's break came when her friends forced her to confront the reality that she was enabling a criminal lifestyle. Beyond embarrassment, it was dangerous for the secret to get out, especially considering Tony's world. It wasn't just about her snobby friends laughing. It was the undeniable truth they revealed. Throughout the show, Melfi's personal struggles and professional lapses bleed into her treatment of Tony. Drinking on the job, outbursts, and compromised boundaries. She was stubborn and protective of her judgment, sometimes to her detriment. Ultimately, Melfi reached the end of the road with Tony organically. After years of justifying and bargaining with herself, the study and Elliot's reveal were just the final push she needed. It was long overdue. Tony wasn't interested in growth or insight. He used therapy as a tool, not a solution. Melfi's professional idealism blinded her for too long. But in the end, she saw Tony for what he really was. A narcissistic, psychopathic killer who wasn't going to change. Are you tired of watching people blow everything they've got on dumb decisions? This is the story of a gambler who lost it all over less than $60,000 and why it's the perfect lesson in how not to bet on yourself.
Davey, this isn't a game for you. Oh, come on.
Davey Scatino wasn't just dumb. He was a special kind of dumb. The guy blew up his entire life over less than 60K. Less than 60 grand split between Tony and Richie. He could have held a clearance sale at the sporting goods store, moved some of those 3 propeller boats and made it back. Kept the business, kept the college fund, kept his dignity. But no. Davey had to keep gambling like he was Rain Man without the math skills. What's wild is that Richie April, full-blown psycho that he was, actually treated Davey fairly. Yeah, Richie. Mr. I paralyze people with my car for fun. And he barred Davey from the poker game until he caught up on his debt. Honestly, restraint. Anyone else would have smelled blood and gone in for the kill. Richie gave him a chance. And what did Davey do with that chance? He dug deeper, kept borrowing, kept playing. Tony didn't even want him in the executive game. He let him buy in reluctantly, capped the loan, and even warned him.
Congratulations, it's a fucking disaster.
When Tony woke up and saw Davey had somehow gone from in for 10 to down 60 while he was sleeping, you could practically hear Tony's soul leave his body. But that's the thing. Tony's not dumb. He saw Davey for what he was, a walking bust-out. You don't break a guy's knees for missing a payment. You bleed him. Slowly. That's the business. As someone once said, you can shear a sheep many times, but you can only skin it once. Now Richie? He wanted that slow, steady vig. He was trying to make Davey his personal ATM, cash back every week. So of course he was pissed when Tony swooped in, scooped up Davey's debt, and aimed for the jackpot, the store itself. Tony saw the bust-out coming a mile away. Richie? He just saw his 8Gs walking away in a Ramsey Sports duffel bag. The irony? Richie was actually decent to civilians when he wasn't running them over. He was polite to Davey, kind to the kid at Beansy's place, even weirdly sweet to strippers. He was a psycho, but he had principles? Maybe. Or maybe he just hadn't worked out that Tony was running circles around him. Davey's fatal flaw wasn't just being dumb. He was an addict. Classic degenerate logic. Lose 5 grand, bet 10 to win it back. Win? Great. Keep betting. Lose? Double down. The man was up at one point in that game. He could have walked out ahead, paid Richie off, maybe even paid Tony. But no, one more hand, always one more hand. He borrowed 10 grand in the middle of the night, lied about it to Chris, and thought Tony wouldn't notice. That's not just stupid, that's suicidal. And don't get started on Eric. The kid's biggest rebellion was off-roading the car his dad couldn't afford anymore. Like father, like son, both allergic to responsibility. Let's be clear, Davey didn't fall. He jumped, head first. He'd probably already mortgaged the house, dipped into the college fund, burned through the store's cash flow, and sold his soul before the poker game even started. Richie just got there late. Tony just cleaned up.
New day. Vegas, huh?
And then Davey moved to Vegas. Vegas, of all places, like it was a fresh start and not the next chapter of his downward spiral. Tony's face when he hears it says it all. Equal parts disbelief and contempt. This guy still doesn't get it. Degenerate, gambler, dumbass. But hey, at least the kid got to Georgetown. Maybe he'll major in economics and learn what his father never could, when to fold. Here's the brutal truth no one admits about Vito's showdown with Finn, and why it wasn't just about secrets or intimidation. So, was Vito actually going to kill Finn? Just revisiting the episode where Finn catches Vito in the act, and there are plenty of questions to unpack. First off, Vito ambushes Finn outside the porta-potty and insists he go to a baseball game, which Finn predictably blows off before running to Meadow. But what was Vito really after?
Well, maybe he wants to fuck me and then kill me.
Was he planning to kill Finn? Or was he trying to seduce him? Or maybe both? The whole scenario feels like a blend of intimidation and complicated desire.
You always leave your door open like that?
I'm cooking, it's hot.
I'll protect her. Don't worry.
Now, the dinner situation. Why on earth would Meadow make chili in a Manhattan apartment when it's sweltering outside? It's basically a recipe for misery. Chili simmers for hours, heating up the whole place, turning the apartment into a sweat lodge. Meanwhile, Finn's sweating through a flannel shirt like it's some kind of punishment. And with all the money Tony has, why is there no air conditioning? You'd think a little AC would be a given to keep Meadow and Finn from roasting in the summer heat. Back to Vito. Was he really planning to kill Finn? More likely he was panicking, trying to gauge what Finn knew and how he might react. Vito went from a risky hookup with the security guard to sizing up Finn at dawn.
2 tickets to see your Padres take a beating from the Yanks tonight. Plus, it's bat night.
The invite to the baseball game seems less like a friendly gesture and more like a power play. It could be a threat, bat in hand at Yankee Stadium, or a twisted attempt at closeness. Depends on how the night goes. And that little moment when Vito grabs Finn's arm and compliments his strength, it's either awkward flirting or classic intimidation, maybe both. Vito's testing the waters, seeing if Finn is down to fool around, or if he needs to be sconced permanently. Meanwhile, the chilly night adds to the discomfort. Everyone's sweating buckets, the place stinking up after simmering for hours. Meadow, trying to act all independent and mature, ends up just adding to the oppressive atmosphere, while Finn deals with mafia drama on top of the heat. In the end, Vito wasn't likely going to kill Finn outright. If Finn had been openly snitching, Meadow would have told Tony, and things would have escalated much faster. Vito's main goal seems to be intimidation, keeping Finn quiet and close enough to monitor. The suitcase packing? Just panic. No grand plan. So was Vito going to kill Finn? Probably not, but he definitely wanted to send a clear message. Keep quiet and maybe get a little closer while he's at it. Just another tangled moment in this complicated story. Most people ignore this subtle but genius detail about Chris and Adriana's relationship, and it completely changes how you see their story. Here's something super interesting about Chris and Adriana's relationship throughout the show. We know Chris is a heroin addict, which means he's basically constipated all the time. Yeah, not glamorous, but true. Meanwhile,
it's called IBS.
Adriana is snitching and suffering from IBS and diarrhea, basically the exact opposite. David Chase isn't just throwing bodily functions in for laughs. By contrasting their bowel habits, he's brilliantly highlighting the growing divide between them. Their lives and fates are no longer in sync. Peak storytelling, honestly. So, to sum it up, Adriana literally shits for the both of them. Charming, right? And that's definitely not going to stop Paulie from taking a sniff. Now, every time you think of her, it's hard not to imagine her panties faintly smelling of diarrhea. Barf. Though some people might find that oddly appealing.
You're high all the time and I can't take it.
Chris called her his smelly Valentine. Not exactly funny. Along with lines like, "You knew you were damaged good, and you never fucking told me." Those were peak moments of douchebaggery. And don't forget, I was trying to say something positive about her because she's your friend. Ugh. Sometimes the show's use of bodily imagery feels like taking a crap, messy and uncomfortable, but other times it's like childbirth. Messy, intense, but kind of sacred. The sacred and the methane. Remember the scene when Chris had no problem going after that chat with the guys on the pier? Classic. Planet also, consider this. You could get a good look at a T-bone steak by sticking your head up a bull's ass, but wouldn't you rather just trust the butcher? Wise words.
One morning there you were with your head half in the toilet.
Chris's head in the toilet bowl was interesting foreshadowing. Jackie also hit rock bottom in a bathroom. Probably not a coincidence. Bathrooms in this show serve as the ultimate metaphor for hitting your lowest point. Always with the scenarios. Always. Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. Do you agree or disagree? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more updates. Your opinions matter, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.